Welcome to the Global Goals Studio. We're continuing with Prime Minister Erna Solberg of Norway, discussing the outlook for achieving the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Prime Minister, all of the goals are ambitious and transformative, but at this time, with the challenges the world faces today, do we have to elevate some over others? Do we have to have some triage here to get back on track for 2030?
Well, I do believe that all of these are interlinked. I believe that success in one area will lead to success in others, and it's not possible to reach the 2030s and lose one of them and not have progress. But I think, of course, what we need to do now is to understand that beside the health effects of COVID-19, losing jobs is huge. Meaning that creating jobs the next years is going to be extremely important to cater for people being able to finance themselves. That's one of the important issues, but we can't do that without having the gender perspective, educational perspective. But I do believe also that all countries will focus on job creation after the COVID-19, because this is where we really are losing out. And with our, with the understanding that leave no one behind is extremely important to understand that this type of crisis has also hit the most marginalized groups the most. We know that tourism, both in industrialized countries, but also in developing countries, is often a big mass employer of people in more marginalized parts of the society. We know that tourism leads to effects for groups that have difficulties with finding a room in the formal economy. So that's one of the issues, we really see that the most marginalized groups are hit. So it's important to create jobs, but it's also important to do all of the rest. But decent work and jobs is going to be vital the next years.
That sounds good. Madam Prime Minister, in terms of creating partnerships, can you tell us what's working and what's not? Do you have any success stories that you can share with us?
Well, I think the best partnerships we have is the work that we have had since the early 2000s around Gavi, the Alliance for Vaccines, which I think is a great example of both businesses and philanthropists and governments working together to find new ways and mechanisms of making sure that we can fight child mortality rates in the numbers that we have done. I also believe that there are a set of policies now on the environmental issues, especially on climate change, that is now, in fact, run also by businesses, that they are building alliance between themselves to put up standards on how to make sure that they are cutting their emissions. And you see investors in businesses putting up much more stricter criteria on what they want to invest in and demanding to know your climate footprint out of the activities of businesses. That's alliances that I see that is now increasingly emerging, because there is an impatience both in civil society and in businesses and investment among investors, where I sometimes think they now are more ambitious than the average national politician is, who is afraid of targeting their own industries. But it seems like the big companies, but also a lot of small and medium-sized companies now understand that in the green shift there is a possibility for new jobs, for new business opportunities, and that they want to take part in that.
That's a particular challenge in Norway, of course. I just want to follow up on some other areas within the goals. Among them, you have taken a particular interest, I think, in access to quality education for all, especially girls and young women in conflict zones. At this time, with so many crises, of course, maybe we don't think so much about conflict zones because we worry about ourselves. You talked about people looking inward, but specifically about education for vulnerable populations in these combat areas. What can partners do? What would you like to see, for instance, the private sector stepping up and doing, particularly for young women in these areas?
Well, first of all, of course, the most important things to get those girls back to school is to create peace. That's the responsibility of national leaders to work on.
Right.
But of course, as long as you have conflict, you have to adapt. And we are in a time in history where it's possible to use new technologies, to use all of that digital technology that we are using to promote other things, and which we all have learned a lot about during the COVID-19. Also to promote more education into conflict zones, into refugee camps, into girls that have to stay at home because of the security situation. So adapting that is important. Of course, the big challenge is that there are the differences in access to speed net that functioning and the technology is different around the world. But we see that, for example, into refugee camps, it's possible to create possibilities for education by using new technologies.
Sadly, I think we're going to have to leave it there. We've been talking to Prime Minister Erna Solberg of Norway. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
You've been watching the Global Goals Studio. Stay with us.
What's a citizen? It's believing in something and doing something about it, being responsible and following through on promises. We're a company of 135,000 citizens. And we have a plan to work toward a greater good, a better future to share, one that will move us all forward. Citizen Verizon, our plan for economic, environmental, and social advancement.